my song?
Where was her dad?
Where everybody?
Now she got
Here.
She tore the bill out, I had to put the bill back.
I did the same thing this morning. 5:45, I went to check the bin.
That's what she done. She busted out of the car. Yeah, she busted out of the car. I got there, I said, I need you. She told me, she said, "Come back here, put it there." Well, I told her, I said, "What's that?" I run off right there, like, she's my sister. Well, when I got there, I told her, well, I'm turning the car around. She said, "You know, she took the car around." She said, "I said, yeah, really, she did." And the next thing we knew, Sandy seen her down there by the house, and she was walking over the wheel. The next thing we knew, she done tore the bill out. I stuck it back in. I said, how did he get it?
What page you got? We'll stay in the same page 50, get opened up.
Can't find it.
What page?
50.
50.
50.
Is there any prayer requests tonight? Well, I believe Ronnie left you on 21, he said, so it should be about 22 in John 3. John 3, down about verse 22.
Well, we missed out on Ronnie, so maybe he'll do it again.
Now, the door's always open.
Ronnie did a fantastic
That's
job.
what I figured, we missed out, so.
He let the board
Next
lead
week.
and he was prepared,
Yeah.
and I learned a lot.
Yeah, I
Good.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good.
Next week. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure on it.
What do you say?
So I got vacation planned.
He's gonna plan one real quick.
We'll just start reading there in, verse 22, and we'll just read it in the chapter there, John chapter 3.
John 3:22. After these things came Jesus and his disciples into the land of Judea, and there he tarried with them and baptized.
23, and John also was baptized in him, Aaron near to Salem, because there was much water there, and they came and were baptized.
Where John was not yet cast into prison.
25, then there arose a question between some of John's disciples and the Jews about purifying.
26, and they came unto John and said unto him, Rabbi, he that was with thee beyond Jordan, to whom thou bearest witness, behold, the same baptizeth, and all men come to him.
27, and John answered and said, a man can receive nothing except it be given him from heaven.
28, ye yourselves bear me witness that I said I am not the Christ, but that I am sent before him.
29. He that hath the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom which standeth and heareth him rejoiceth greatly because of the bridegroom's voice, that this my joy therefore. I can't even read. Oh my goodness. That. I'm done.
This my joy therefore is fulfilled. The Spirit's coming.
You are tongue tied.
I was.
30. He must increase, but I must decrease. I had it easy.
31, he that cometh from above is above all. He that is of the earth is earthly, and speaketh of the earth. He that cometh from heaven is above all.
32, and what he hath seen and heard, that he testify, and no man receiveth his testimony.
33. He that
It's contagious.
Gosh, I'm sorry. It's because I laughed at Laura. Okay. He that hath received his testimony hath set to his seal that God is true. I'm sorry. Okay.
34, for he whom God hath sent speaketh the words of God, for God giveth not the Spirit by measure unto him. The Father loveth the Son, and hath given all things into his hand. He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not on the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him. I'm sure you had some good discussion on John 3. I told him I was wanting to get back and watch the video that Gabe got, and I didn't get to go back and watch it. Or somebody put on there, Gabe and Ronnie won, but leading up to that, that's, going into John 3, and the first part of it is probably the most well-known part of the Bible and the world, probably. Nicodemus and Jesus being together. We get down here, and I like the way this study Bible titles the last testimony of John the Baptist. And, the first couple verses is just giving us an area of where they went, and they was continuing baptizing, and Jesus got in there with them. But I want to jump down to 25 there, and it says, there arose a question between some of John's disciples and the Jews about purifying. It is contagious. That's something, there's always questions and things that go on. It's like when we started John, and I ended up hitting Romans, and we went down the Romans road and things. that led off of questions that happened in Bible study, you know, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go here, and because if nothing else, to know the basics of what to tell somebody to be saved. But you know, as they get right here, you can imagine, I always try to put myself in their shoes. If you think about it, if you followed John the Baptist and you've seen the things that he done, and then Jesus comes along, and they're like, you know, you'd kind of be nothing to. You know, it's just like I face these things in my life that something maybe we've heard earlier in our life, or we've been taught earlier in our life, and then you know, we figure out, you know, I'll never forget the time at Swiss, and we was sitting there, we was in Bible study, and somebody said, you'll know the end times by the changing of the seasons or whatever. And I was like, you're in Bible study? I'm like, well, where is that? I searched the next week and I never found it. And I haven't found it. You know, it's something we always heard, you know. And as these people right here, and as I read this, I thought about this. There's never a bad question when we're having Bible study. You know, so if you're sitting on a question, ask the question. I may not have the answer, but somebody else in here may, because we have a really good open Bible study. But you know, just because I preached on it a week or so ago about, maybe on Sunday, about, you know, that we can get stuck in ruts and get stuck in a certain place, you know. And this is kind of, you know, almost where they was at. They had seen John all these times and what John had done, the purification process they're talking about, and all these things. And then Jesus comes along. And John told them that, hey, I'm the forerunner. I'm just here telling you that this guy's coming. And he is coming. Verse 26, and they came unto John and said unto him, Rabbi, he that was with thee beyond Jordan, to whom thou bearest witness, behold, the same baptizeth, and all men come to him. So they see a change in pattern here, right? Everybody was, we're going to John. Now they're going to Jesus. And John's going to answer him, and like that title said, the last testimony of John, he was giving a testimony about Jesus, really. I mean, that's really where, you know, that's where our focus should always be, is towards never standing up to glorify ourselves, I guess, even in a testimony. You know, most testimonies, it's always, man, you believe that this happened and this is how God intervened in it. You know, we hear one every week, it seems like here, you know, somebody's got something going on. But as they got into their here, they're going to get set straight, I guess, in a way. John answered and said, a man can receive nothing except it be given from heaven. And 28 years shalt bear witness that I said, I am not the Christ, but I am sent before him. And, you know, as you think about verse 27, and then John tells them, I'm nothing, I'm just sent before him, I'm just the forerunner, I'm just telling you that he's coming, the Messiah's coming. But back to 27, when John answered him and said, receive nothing except it be given from heaven, what do you all think about that? You receive nothing except it be given from heaven.
I agree with it.
What is it?
I agree with it.
Yeah. Well, I had this thought when I was looking at this. We think about everything that we got. You think about a vehicle, clothes, house, everything you got. Even though those earthly possessions, in a way, God still, you're still receiving that from Him. Even everything that you get, He still was provided a job to make the money, to be able to purchase the car, to be able to buy the clothes, to do all these things. So everything that we do still is from heaven. And we're still receiving everything from God.
And you could look at it even deeper, your life.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have life if it wasn't for God.
Yeah.
Oh, he's like what Gloria said, we're well blessed.
Yeah.
It came from God, we were blessed.
Yeah. I see, you mentioned that, and I seen it, it was a thing that was on Facebook the other day, and I think it was I don't remember the exact number, but I wanna say it was $4,180. And if you have $4,180 of possessions, not just cash or possessions or anything, you're 50% you're richer than 50% of the people in the world. With $4,180 of this possession. That could be a truck, clothes, anything you look at. If you've got $4,180, so you think about how much God blesses America. Because probably every one of us in here can. I mean, if we literally took everything and sold everything we had, we would come up with $4,180.
Or if I took it and sold it for what I told Teddy I paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not tell that, but yes, you can still get that. But, you know, realizing that, as I read that, I couldn't get it out of my mind. You know what? It doesn't matter what we have is from heaven. You know, as John was telling them here, you know, and we're looking at it and studying the Bible, it's salvation. It's, you know, that ultimately comes from heaven. That's our ticket to heaven. That's our answer to everything. Is what Jesus Christ did for us on the cross, which hasn't happened at this time yet. But still, everything that is given is from heaven. Even when, you know, they're still under the law and the Ten Commandments and everything, it was still given to God, you know. He still gave it to them to give them some kind of leadership and guidance. But, you know, we've got the whole Bible to guide us and plenty of examples of how not to live also. Yeah. Anybody's got anything? I'm going to warn you, as I went through this, it was going to be, I was going to be quick finishing chapter 3. So, 29, he that hath the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom, which standeth and heareth him, rejoiceth greatly, because of the bridegroom's voice. This, my joy, therefore, is very. Man, we cannot read tonight, can we? Therefore,
It's this verse that I had trouble with.
it's fulfilled. That's where it all started.
It's like the hat.
The bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom, which standeth and heareth him, rejoiceth greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. This, my joy, therefore, is fulfilled.
And
You know
can
what
remi-
it made me start thinking about? It's like at a wedding, the best man that stands with the bridegroom, you know, that's a very important role that person, that's that friend that stands there and rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's, you know, what's happening. But I wonder if that's how that all started.
maybe. But you know, that's essentially just like you described, if you think about it in that way. That's what John's kind of saying, I'm standing here as the best man. Jesus is here. He's getting married. You know, and it is a rejoiceful time, I guess. You know, when you go to a wedding or something and people get married and things, it's they do rejoice, you know, and as John is saying here, you know, as he has witnessed Jesus now. He's here and he's rejoicing to that.
I just looked at, I mean, this is just AI generated. The best man is a key figure in a wedding, acting as the groom's right-hand person before, during, and after the ceremony. He's not just a participant, but a coordinator, helper, and friend, ensuring that the groom's needs are met and the wedding runs smoothly. I mean, you can look at John the Baptist, he was all those things.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, he laid out the groundwork for everything to be there. And, you know, ultimately, I believe in our words, that's what he's saying. It's just like that, and we can take our vision and look to a wedding, and that's it. Here's probably one that's earthly hard for us. Verse 30, he must increase, but I must decrease. Now, we might sit here and think, well, I think we'll do that. But once we get up there, and, you know, like somebody lifts you up, and, oh yeah, I did, you know, I got this. And you know what? I want to increase Jesus Christ. Everything that I preach or teach or try to do for God, it's not for that. It's for Jesus. And it's for to tell the world about Jesus. And, you know, sometimes, as John said, you know what? I have been increased. Just as you look back to the start of where we started reading right here. He was increased because they had the questions. Wait a minute, some other guys coming in here. We've been following you. You've been the one that's doing the amazing things and stirring up all the stuff and telling us about this stuff happening. Oh, wait a minute, this other guy's coming. He says, you know what? I got to decrease because he's up here. You know, so we got to make sure that we don't increase ourselves in our situations. And I'll say in my case, it's easy for me to do. When God really gets a hold of you and gives you a great sermon, man, you just know it is. You know, you can see it in people's faces as you're preaching. It's hitting them. And you're like, I'm driving the nails, you know. But it ain't me. It's gone. Because ultimately, if it was up to me, I probably would be preaching.
And John the Baptist accepted his role. He had a job to do, but when it was time for that to be put aside, he relinquished that over to the one that needed to increase, and he knew when to pull back, you know, and God designed that way, but human nature can cause that not to happen that way when, you know, but so John accepted his role willingly.
I think about retirement too.
I do too.
When you're getting ready to retire, you've got people that have worked, that you know, you've taught how to do the job and how to do it well and what they're supposed to do. In this case, you know, Christ obviously knows way more than John the Baptist does, but there's that sense of relief that comes from knowing that whoever you're handing it over to is going to do a good job with it and you'll be able to carry that torch and take it forward. And in that way, it might be a little more something that we can relate with as far as how John the Baptist might have been feeling in that statement versus when we're up and coming and we're trying to be the ones that are, you know, there and getting the job done and trying to learn, we're trying to get ourselves elevated up so when we see that we think, that's going to be hard to do. But then once you get faced with that other side of it of, you know, I want to make sure that this job still gets done. I want to make sure that everything happens right and everything happens well. And I want to know that the one that's coming next knows everything I know on plus. And they figured out new things and great things and that torch is going to get carried.
That's really a great analogy. And having gone through retirement 4 times now, I can relate because you want that person to be successful, not just because of because you taught them, but you want to make sure you taught them the right things and gave them the right resources, know where to go, so that when you do relinquish that over to them, they are prosperous, and not necessarily in worldly things, but they are prosperous as far as carrying on that job to do it the right way and even think of things to do it even better, you know, as things become available to them. And that's a great sense of accomplishment that you have in that, but you have to work a long time to do that.
But it is, that was a great analogy there, you know, and it is, you know, and John knew and understood that he was handing it over to the number one. He could never do that good a job. He knew he wasn't able to. 31 says, he that cometh from above is above all. He that is of the earth is earthly, and speaketh of the earth. He that cometh from heaven is above all.
Amen.
He knew that Jesus had came from heaven. He knew that God had sent his only son down here. He knew that Jesus knew it all. He had all power that he wanted. That John, I believe John, I think he, to go to say he fully understood.
His mission, maybe.
Yeah, his mission and what Jesus was.
Mhm.
You know, what the task at hand was to happen. You know, he had, you know, you think, what all John had already said. You know, when he baptized Jesus.
And to think that all started in the womb of his mother,
Yeah.
you know, which gives us assurance that God had a plan for us in the very beginning, before we were ever in the womb. You know, he knew that we were going to be. And that's very reassuring to know that my Creator had me in mind all along.
And just, you know, from the Virgin Birth of Mary and how old John's mom was and everything that happened in key with it, you know, it's amazing, but, you know, it's definitely, you know, he knew, Jesus knew it all. He was from heaven, he had seen heaven, he could speak of heavenly things. He knew what was there to offer John, you know, all ever been on the earth. And all I can speak about is earthly things. You know, not with, he hadn't been there and seen it or known it. And I kind of got ahead of myself. And what he has seen and heard, and that he testifieth, and no man receiveth his testimony. He that hath received his testimony hath set to his seal that God is true. You know, as how do I say it? They titled the last of this John's declaration. You know, John's making a point here now in the end of this, and what he's, you know, with what he's given, and it's our, you know, our testimony. It's I can remember when I talked to a few people that's passed away, and actually preached at one of the funerals and things. And they said, you know what? They talked about what testimony they left when they lived their life here on the earth. You know, and you know, with John here, he had lived a great testimony, telling everybody about Jesus Christ. Even though you think about him, people thought, man, this guy is crazy, just from the way he dressed and the way he took care of things. But you know what? You look back on him now, he got people's attention, and you think about God's plan. Getting their attention.
Well, we saw a little bit of that in the Christmas or Easter play when John the Baptist showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was crazy.
He definitely would have grabbed your attention
Yeah.
if he was anything like that.
He scared that lawyer a little bit, especially the first
I
time.
thought you were gonna say, he was good.
No, God was good. He's got to increase. We've always increased off of Christmas plays and Easter plays, and you think about just how much, you know, God sends from heaven, how much He sent just about all the church. I'm talking in a whole, all the things that go on, the Christmas plays and the talent that's there, and the talent that's, I mean, I couldn't begin to start building some of this stuff. They build for Bible school and stuff, for decorations and plays that's been wrote and things. And I think about that and I'm like, how would be, well, I mean, this wouldn't get done, probably. You know, without God intervening. But you know, those things, he sent each one of us from heaven.
Without God intervening, but he did.
Yep, he did.
When he said all the different,
He did, definitely. "34, for he whom God hath sent speaketh the words of God, for God giveth not the Spirit by measure unto him."
in a limited way, he doesn't limit.
Mhm.
For God giveth not the Spirit by limiting.
And you refer that, as I did earlier, you refer that Spirit over, and you think about that, you know, that's Jesus' best friend, the Holy Spirit there, when you think about it. And he is fully that. He was complete in that. 35, the Father loveth the Son, and hath given all things into his hand. He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not on the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him. And you think about those two last verses right there. The Father loveth the Son, and hath given all things into his hand. You know, just as we know and understand that at some point we're going to see, whether it's before we physically die like normal or Jesus comes back, but either way, we're going to see that. We're going to see the Son take over, and we're going to be able to reign with him if we're saved. And John's filling them in right there in the last verse. That's the only way to everlasting life is the Son. He already knew that Jesus was the key to everlasting life. And if you believed on him, you got it. And if you didn't, you get the wrath of God, which is eternal damnation, hell. There's only two choices, and that's the choices that we have. And I look around the room, and I say this a lot, but I look around the room, and everybody in here's, I believe, got their ticket punched to heaven. They've got the golden ticket. They know who Jesus Christ is, but still somebody may listen to this later and be like, what are they talking about? And it's still we say it all the time, the ABCs, it's admit, believe, and confess in Jesus Christ. Admit you're a sinner, believe on him, that God sent him here, he died on the cross, and he was rose again on the third day. And you know what? Tell the world about it. I tell everybody every chance I get. If God opens the door, I hope that I take it. Anybody got anything to add to chapter 3? I told you guys going to be quick.
It's the choice that we have, right? That everyone has.
Yep,
Yeah.
Right at the end there.
it is. What do y'all think we just, we'll go into business meeting? It's 20 to 8. We'll finish up on chapter 3.